Hi, welcome everybody to today's session where we're going to explore how digital innovations are empowering medicine. In particular, we'll take a look at how we can break down data silos using voice to enable innovations that drive efficiencies, improve patient outcomes, and increase clinician satisfaction. I'm Richie Hoffman. I'm a cloud healthcare architect with Pariveda Solutions, and I'm joined today by my partner, Dr. Nicholas Desai.
Thanks, Richie. Hi, folks. My name is Dr. Nicholas Desai. I'm the Chief Medical Officer and Chief Quality Officer here at Houston Methodist Sugar Land and the former CMIO at Houston Methodist. Today, we're going to take you through a journey. This journey is on our voice ecosystem design and delivery to help enable efficiencies, improve outcomes, and more importantly, satisfaction across our entire health delivery system. Back to you, Richie.
A quick word on Pariveda Solutions. We have a very strong partnership with AWS being a premier consulting partner. We hold their healthcare competency designation, and we've been launch partners for many AWS technologies. We know AWS, we know innovation, and we know healthcare. We're also proud of our partnerships with many healthcare organizations across North America, and especially proud of our partnership with Houston Methodist, who are leading medicine in so many different areas. So to provide a quick word on Houston Methodist, I'll hand over to Dr. Desai to introduce his organization.
Thanks, Richie. I'm here today to kind of share with this group a little bit about Houston Methodist and my organization. What I'd like to direct you to is, our organization composition. We're located in the Houston metro area. We're a faith-based institution. We have an academic medical center in the center of Houston. We have 6 community hospitals in the periphery. We have 1 long-term acute care hospital. Interestingly, if you look at our stats, we've got 25,000 plus employees. Of our 7,900 physicians, about 1,100 are employed within our physician organization, which is our employed group. What's interesting about that stat, and I hope it resonates to many of you listening in, is that most of those providers are private. So I have different constituents that we serve in terms of our physician population as well. When voice was brought forward, why this was even critically important to us is if you look to the left side of our screen, and pre-pandemic, you could see the number of admissions, the outpatient visits, and the clinic visits that we've had really drove in looking at experience, efficiency, and satisfaction amongst all user groups was very keen in why we designed and developed this partnership to drill into what we now have built as our voice ecosystem. Thanks, Richie. Back to you.
Thank you. At Pariveda Solutions, we believe in riding that leading edge of partnership and technology to embrace and even define the future. As we all know, healthcare begins at birth and continues to end-of-life care, and there are opportunities to innovate all along the spectrum. And with well-placed technology and digital touchpoints, connect all of these stages together. For today, we'll look at just a small slice of this patient journey by following Lena, your typical patient, to see how this technology can be transformative in her experience. We'll hone in on 2 particular areas, a medical incident and rehabilitation, as we follow her through her journey. So to set the stage with a little bit of background on Lena, she was feeling numbness and tingling in her arms. After physical therapy, a consultation with her primary care physician, and then being recommended to a specialist, she found that she had neural stenosis and would need a spinal fusion from a neurosurgeon. Now, already we're seeing a narrative of this patient journey develop from that initial visit, following up with a specialist, anticipating care, receiving care, and post-care through her inpatient surgeries and outpatient follow-ups. Now, in particular, the last 3 there are very important: the anticipating care, receiving care, and post-care. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Desai, who will dive into each of these elements a little bit further.
Excellent. So what I'm hoping to share with you today is really kind of taking Lena through this journey. So let's pause for a moment and think about Lena and her journey here. Here's a person who's coming in, who's looking for three areas of care. She's expecting a type of service. She's expecting to ensure that she's got connectedness, and she needs convenience because she's trying to address a problem as fast as possible. So really, when you think about the way a patient expects care to be delivered, and in the journey that we live in today, it really is, we've got multiple touch points in which where we can start to think through these engagement opportunities. So when we think of anticipating care or receiving care or the post-delivery of care, it really hits the kind of the basic concepts, the show me, know me, and care for me. And so where we believe where voice is going to take us is to help minimize and truly impact those touch points in a more convenient, concise, and connected way with each one of our patients, depending on where in that journey they're in. And so today we'll walk you through some examples of what that journey map looks like and how we at Houston Methodist have come together to develop this new ecosystem, and that we're very proud and excited to share with the group with. So pause for a moment and think about this, is that when you think about when patients walk through your doors, what should that experience feel like? And how do you get to a place where you can transform and translate that to an actionable kind of place to where it creates the same synergistic experience regardless of that consumer? And that consumer in our case will be speaking of the patient, but also the physician, the caregivers, and the nurses and others who touch these patients along the way. So thank you to Paraveda and Amazon Web Services for working with us to be our partners at Houston Methodist. And what I'm going to walk you through in a moment is really how the ecosystem was designed and built, and in which case I'll also share with you some lessons learned of why and how we did this in this very kind of segmented but very uniform prescriptive manner. The first part is, we decided that the voice ecosystem has to serve two different purposes. First and foremost, if you think about the clinic experience for a moment, it's truly conversational. The patient comes to you in his or her most vulnerable state, in which they're talking about symptoms, and you also and on a physician's side are trying to help quickly diagnose, triage, and manage the care of that patient in a way to where you're actually in those minutes that you have with them are diagnosing, proposing a plan together, and ultimately laying out what's next for them. So working with Amazon Transcribe Medical and Amazon's Comprehend Medical Solutions, we were able to work with Paraveda to develop what would be called what I will call a conversational or automatically transcribed solution directly into our EHR platform. So, or regardless of what database you might use or what form EHR you use, we wanted something to be prescriptive and near real time so that I could capture the symptoms, the nuances, the inflections that a patient might share with me, and then ultimately be able to then, in the same vein, almost have my digital assistant helping me look at this, help me code the chart, help me capture those elements that would be in going from conversational speak to translated ICD-10 coding and or concepts that I might want to include as I design and develop a note that ultimately is my next communication tool that I'll share with other caregivers, providers, and in this case, the patient. So here we designed and developed our own ambient listening solution to where we have a speaker in the room. The speaker serves as our kind of digital assistant, in which when the patient walks in the room, consent is given by the patient. That conversation is recorded in near real time. This is documented and placed directly back into my EHR. In doing so, I'm able to capture not just the fact that this patient had uncontrolled pain. But as we dissect that conversation, we can then now look at, oh, well, this might have been as a result of this procedure Lena might have just had. And as a result, we're actually capturing the appropriateness of that coding, but also helping me drive down those algorithms and things that I might have already created as best practices within my own organization or my own practice. And so this, again, leveraging voice as a solution. And remember, like I said, we prescriptively did this. So in this concept, please keep in mind that we're talking about the conversational ambient listening solution in an outpatient setting of how this could transform that experience to where now, just like you and I are having this conversation, I'm not losing sight of you, but I'm rather just talking to you. And there's something capturing that versus the traditional mode we've all now learned and accustomed to is where someone is clicking on a kiosk or a keyboard or of some sort trying to jot something down to not lose that moment of what you shared with us. And so we've been able to take away some of those barriers, re-engage the patient-provider relationship, and ultimately capture this information to keep that experience to be uniform across the board. But as we now transition, let's not forget why we're here in this ecosystem when we're talking about voice. So in this context, we're going to talk about inpatient surgeries. And very specifically, as I shared with you, our ambient listening solution in our clinical offices, this is an environment where we wanted to still leverage our uniform platform of our voice ecosystem to go hands-free. Because in certain scenarios, we might want to use different solutions to be task-driven or action-oriented in ways beyond just conversational listening. So what we decided to do is that I'm sure any of you listening in can probably let your imaginations go wild and how could I leverage this solution? Well, we wanted to work with our partners at AWS and Imparivata to use Amazon Lex to create the secure interface with AWS Lambda for pulling up certain information and directly allowing it to flow back into our EHR. So in this scenario, what I'm going to share with you is the way we've used this in our operating rooms. So in our operating rooms, similar to our offices where we've designed and developed our listening solutions, this solution is used a bit differently. Instead of just using it for ambient listening and conversation, we are using it to drive a task and commands. So in this scenario, when I walk into my operating room, I will initiate or wake the computer. And as I wake the computer, I can give it certain utterances or commands that it will recognize, and it will start to either capture those elements. So the example you're seeing on the right side of your screen is very similar to a surgical safety checklist, which is where we started this conversation with. And so when you walk into my operating room, we want to ensure that that surgical safety checklist at all aspects of that surgical journey are managed to a T with never events, where everything is captured, everything is documented, and everything is done in a way that's very uniform across the board. So here, our computer acts as another digital assistant, where we can wake the computer, and at which point we can now use either utterances to either apply the tourniquet, start a timer, etc. And it will now not only initiate it in a visual format on a large screen display for us as the provider or the surgeon in the room, but for the entire care team, but also write it back directly into our EHR. So when you think about going hands-free and in a world when we talk about convenience and we talk about minimizing errors, what better way than to leverage someone's voice to help drive some of these actions? So today, in many of our hospitals, we might have a nurse, a physician, a scrub technician, an anesthesiologist, all playing a portion in that journey, in that high velocity, high flow area within the operating room. Now, here leveraging voice, we're able to ensure we capture the right words, we capture the right timers, and we're writing it back to create that safe environment. And we can untether that nurse or other practitioner who might have been that ancillary support to capture that information to do a different task, or more importantly, help us create and continue to maintain a safe environment for those cases to occur. So, in summary, I hope what you hope to see out of this is what we continue to call our kind of ecosystem, where we've segmented the use of voice in ways that where can voice drive this? Voice can be used from an ambient listening perspective. Voice can also be used to go to transform a new experience in where it's task driven, action oriented, and can both write back to your EHR to create that synergy. And so that is what this partnership between AWS and Paraveda has allowed Houston Methodist to do. And again, we're just at the cusp. And now as I transition to my partner here, just think about all those options you might have. Maybe it's an ER workflow. Maybe it's a code workflow, or maybe it's some other area. Maybe it's nursing documentation, or it's task driven you might want to consider. So the opportunities are endless on how you think about voice, but it's got to be very prescriptive. You've got to segment it, and you've got to know your audience. And it goes back to the flywheel concept that small little actions will continue to give you momentum to kind of gain that speed or velocity you need to make that change, transformative change.
So to tie it all back together, we've seen two examples that really highlight the versatility of voice, from that very task-oriented workflow to the free-flowing conversational dialogue a patient and provider may have. And following Lena's journey, we've seen the way that these digital innovations are empowering medicine. Now is the time to really start thinking about that holistic patient journey within your organizations. These technologies are, resulting in better patient outcomes, improving the cost of care, and enhancing the experience of care as well. We feel privileged to have partnered with leading organizations like Houston Methodist and AWS to be put at the forefront of it all.
When you think of transformation and you think of innovation, think about culture, think about what's happening. And for us, without partners like Paraveda and AWS, what I call are my ACEs. And ACEs are really, they're aligned, they're collaborative, they're engaged, and they're synchronized, right? So they are my partners in making this happen. So in order for us to create this new bench to bedside innovations, we must work with these groups to kind of figure out how to create these outcomes, improve the delivery of care. And as we think through an experience that is really uniform across our consumer market, and that consumer market is really drilling into the patient, the physician, the nurse, and all the caregivers that we serve collectively. So in closing, I hope you recognize that, for us, our voice journey is just beginning, but we've recognized that the voice journey is where we're going to double down on, because it allows us to segment the populations in very different ways for our use cases, whether it's task-oriented, whether it's listening, but ultimately it's all for the same piece, which is continuous improvement of how we iterate to be the best. So thank you for your time today. And I hope this has just sparked a little bit about what voice can do and what we've done with Paraveda and AWS. Thanks a lot.